this is where we'll start from. So what do you know about content creation? What do you know about content writing? What do you know about copywriting? So content writing is creating engaging content for online use, while copywriting is the task of writing the text for advertisements or publicity material. Now, why do you need to know how to write? I'm sure most of you are entrepreneurs. How many people run businesses here? Like private businesses? None? Nobody? Okay, but so, I mean, eventually, if you're a real estate person, you need to write content, you need to write ads to advertise the property you're selling, and people can contact you because of what you wrote. So the whole point of this class today is just to tell you how to make your writing engaging for people to want to click on it. So my name is Joyce, and we're going to talk about stories today. We're going to talk about the importance of stories and why people use stories to sell. Okay, principles of a good storyteller. So before we go into this, just think about any ad you've seen online, be it video, maybe a post, anything, and you discover it's always a story. Maybe if they're advertising Omo, they might start by 2 women washing in a bowl, and then one woman's dress is cleaner than the other. It's always a story. Or if you start with, if you're reading something online, someone will start, my sister, blah, 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 and then they now sell the product. Every product you've ever bought in your life, there's a story attached to it. And most of the time, people don't know that they bought things because of a story. If you meet someone and the person is from the same place as you, probably talks like you or went to the same school with you, automatically you feel like you've known that kind of person for a long time, and most often you're like, oh, I like this person. But the reason you like them is because you can relate to them. So why stories work with products is people relate to the product, people relate to the brand. And so people tend to go for brands and products that they relate to. And that's what storytelling is for. So you use good stories to get people to relate with your brand. So 7 principles for effective writing. Now, when we talk about stories, we're not talking about movies. I'm not saying that you need to start writing Nollywood scripts, not at all. Or maybe, long, especially if you're not a writer, you'd be like, do I have to start thinking about stories? Now, the whole point of storytelling is, at some point you need to write. At some point you have to write. You need to write a letter to an investor. You need to do a presentation about a business. You need to meet people. You need to talk to them. So the whole point of this is you need to learn that at the core of every business, at the core of every transaction, the thing that people choose more often is the emotional ties. Like people would choose something emotionally and then find a logical reason to back up their reason. How you can walk in and then somebody looks at you and they already have an emotional reaction to you, and then they find a logical reason to back it up. That's how human beings operate. So when it comes to writing, you want to be able to direct the narrative. So the first principle of effective writing is brevity. So you need to be short and straight to the point. If you're writing any letter, if you're writing an ad copy, you need to go straight to the point. There's no point going round and round to say the same thing. If what you want to say, you can say it in one line, say it in one line. It's bad manners to actually waste people's time. Because when you waste people's time, they don't trust you anymore. They're like, if you took forever to say one point, how do I trust that you'll give me the right things I need from you? So the second thing is you need to be clear. You're not writing to impress people. You're writing for people to understand what you're saying. It's almost like if I came here and instead of saying 7 principles of effective writing, I start using huge words like I'm thinking of huge. There's this politician that whenever he starts going on with like huge words and you're like, he's not clear, you cannot understand what he's saying. In writing, you're not trying to impress people. You're not trying to show people how many words you know in English. You need to be clear. You need to go straight to the point. You need to communicate. The whole point of writing is communication. You need to be able to inform people. If you're putting up a land up on your Facebook, for instance, and then you're saying the land is located at this place. The title is you put the title there. How much is it? You put that, like you put the information that they need to know. You don't start going around about how the village is the important village in the southwest, blah, 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 something. So it doesn't make any sense. People want to see, communicate to them, give them the necessary information they need. Because if the thing is, when you're writing, assume that you are reading it. Assume that you didn't write this. You're on your phone and you just saw an ad. What's going to make you click on it? Imagine if you see a copy and there's so many words, the person is going on, and you cannot see the point. What happens? You click over it because you're like, why is he wasting time? So usually you need to go straight to the point. You need to inform them and you need to influence them. So put emphasis on the strongest words in the most important places. When they were running an ad for this training, when they put out the banner for the training, there were emphasis on the word, it's a free training. It's a free training. You don't have to pay for it. Now the emphasis were to make the reader know that they don't have to pay. Now if we didn't write free training several times, some people would be discouraged because they'll think they have to pay. So you need to emphasize stuff. If maybe it's a land you're advertising, you need to emphasize the title, especially if the title is the most important thing. Sometimes you need to say two times, 3 times. You need to put emphasis on the strongest places where you want them to say, because most people don't take time to read. They just like scan through. So you need to put the most important things so that they can see. If your call to action has to be emphasized as well, sometimes you have to say 3 times. Click here, click here, click here. I mean, you see it often and you're like, they could have said it 1 time. The reason why they say it 3 times is emphasis, because when they emphasize, you push the person to take the action. And then you have honesty. When you're writing anything, you need to be honest. If you don't have true information, you might as well leave it, because everything you write is evidence against you. If you lie and you actually got somebody, when they go there and what you wrote and what you said is not correlating, you're in trouble, because they're like, okay, you lied to me. You told me that this is what, and that's it. Usually people go by first impression. If I know that you lied to me, there's nothing else you say that I can believe. So you put the honest information that you have. You need to be honest in your writing. And then reading. To write well, you need to read well. If you've never had an experience writing an ad copy, a good thing to do is to look at other people's ad copies. Look at how they wrote it, pick out the things you like. You can even imitate them. I mean, you have to write like them, imitate them until you get it. That's how most writers work. Because really, it's hard to actually create something from scratch. There's really nothing you can create from scratch. Everything that you see that's created, people had to do research and pick from here. I like this. I like how this person used this title. I like this. I like that picture. So you bring them together and you have your ad copy. And the last thing is read it aloud to yourself. Now, if you wrote something and in your head, when you were writing it, it sounded really good. By the time you read it to yourself, you can tell if it doesn't make any sense. Because when you're reading it to yourself, that's how somebody else is reading it to themselves. So it's good to read it to yourself to know if what you're saying makes sense at all. Okay, so imagination. Humans are imaginative, paint a picture with words. Now, when it comes to storytelling, the reason why storytelling is powerful is because it makes you to imagine. It tickles, it makes your brain to go places. When, for instance, like the trending story. So you have a lot of people arguing, mostly because people are imagining it differently. So somebody's playing in their head in a different way, and somebody's playing in their head in a different way. And that's what happens with stories. When you read a story, for instance, the Cinderella story, we all have like this imagination of what it could be. I mean, it's just a story. It has never happened, but it's imaginative. It makes you imagine. And so with houses, when you're selling houses, it's very important to use very good, clean pictures. Now, the reason is you cause people to imagine. You want them to imagine themselves in the bedroom. You want them to imagine themselves in the bathroom. You want people to be like, imagine yourself. You don't have to say the word. You don't have to tell them, imagine yourself. By the time you show clean pictures, you see your imagination starts opening. It's the same thing when you see maybe a very clean Mercedes-Benz. The first thing that comes to your mind is you imagine yourself in it. You're like, oh wow, it'd be nice driving this car. So that's what you do with pictures, and that's what you do with words. You need to play with people's imaginations. So what's the power of a good story? Why a story is very powerful? So first of all, stories are powerful because our brains understand stories. Okay, I'm not going to go into the whole biology about how we started as cavemen and we always sat down together to tell stories at night, and then we fell asleep, and now we are evolved human beings and story still works. So if you walk into a presentation and let me use an example. Imagine I came here and I started giving people facts, and I'm like, so Facebook has 1,000 and this billion users. Facebook has 10,000 active users. 50,000 people are using their phones right now. 50,000 people sent messages last night. After the first three figures, most of you will be like, okay, you go off. Literally, your mind will just shut down because you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just counting numbers. Have you ever been in a seminar where there are a lot of facts that are just train numbers, and then your mind shuts down? It's biological. It's one of those things. It's hard to pay attention when there are a lot of figures and facts, and it happens too with writing and ads. But if I came and I started with a story and I tell you, so last night I was in the hospital, my mom fell sick, I went to the hospital, the doctor told us, what happens is you're with me, you're like, I want to know the end of the story. Your imagination starts working, we're engaging, we're interacting, and it's even stronger if you've been in that similar position. You start feeling like, oh yeah, I can relate to you because I've been in the hospital, my mom has been sick. And so that's how you get people. Sooner or later, you'll be like, oh, I like that story. Oh, I like the girl. It's like, I can talk to you after this. That's what happens with stories. Stories brings us together. You feel that you're like somebody else because your stories are similar. And that's why it's good. That's the power of storytelling. And the thing is, when you're speaking to a customer, when you're speaking to a client, you need to understand that they're humans first. They have stories. They have feelings. That's where you want to talk to them with. If you have sold, you realize most of the time the people that end up buying for you are people that you rapport with them. The whole thing people call as rapport or get to know them more is really stories. Because the whole process of getting to know someone is you're either sharing a story about yourself or you're hearing a story about the person, right? So you want to be able to control the narrative because you want to make sure that everybody that comes to you, you can sell to them. So you want to be able to control the narrative, and that's why you need to know how to tell a good story. You need to know how to write a good story. And the more complete the story being told in the ad, the more successful the ad. Why do you think MTN spends a lot of money to maybe act almost a short Nollywood movie of a blind bride that wants to get married? Who saw the ad that she's blind and she needed to talk to her husband over the phone before? Who is Igbo? You know the Igbo traditional wedding where you have to carry the wine and look for your husband, and then the lady was blind. And so she needed to find her husband. And what happened was she had an earpiece in her ear, and the guy was speaking to her, turn left, turn right. And that was the ad. So they had to use like a traditional wedding setting. And most people have been to traditional weddings. So it was one of those, after watching the ad, you're like, oh, nice, you're smiling. You see yourself smiling. You're happy that they met at the end and they hugged and whatever and they're married. It's just an ad. They're actually advertising call time. But you're happy. You're like, oh, wow, that was really nice. And it registers in your mind. Subconsciously, it does. And that's what stories do. Okay. So another thing that works very well with story is pictures, clean, clear pictures. Now, when you look at this picture, what do you see? Anybody? Yes, a happy family, a nice, in a cool place. So this is we're advertising a house. So you want to buy a house. Imagine if you wanted to buy a house and I had 2 pictures. I would have done this. 2 pictures, a clear, clean picture of the kitchen. Nobody is inside. Clean. And then you have another picture, a family is inside. What do you relate to most? One with the family. Why? Because I've ticked your imagination. Now you're thinking, this can be my family, you know? It'd be nice to host my family here. I'd like to have a place like this for my family. And that's what you should do with the ads. You want to cause people to imagine. Because when you start imagining yourself in it, you'll be like, you know what? I'll buy it now. And that's how it works. So you want to use pictures that, you know, that sends that kind of message. You want people to be stirred up emotionally. So, but you don't have to tell them that I'm stirring you up emotionally. But yeah, that's it. Have you ever wondered why they use models to advertise cars? I mean, it doesn't make sense logically. Like, it's a car. Why is there a sexy woman around? I mean, the whole point is men are visual, and the ad is targeted. That's mostly male buyers, and it's one of those. They make you think that, oh, if I have a car, I can get a very beautiful girl. And most men, that's what pushes them, consciously or unconsciously. Yeah, that's the truth, consciously or unconsciously. Because, I mean, quite frankly, if you're going to buy a car, what you need is an engineer to tell you can burn half liter of fuel. You can use, I mean, logically, that's what it should be. But what do you see? You see a very beautiful girl coming. Because people don't really care about the engineering, let's be honest. I mean, I can tell you, the marble on this thing, in 100 years, will still be here. Who cares? The person is looking at you, so it's just facts. What you want to do is you want to build a story. You want to be like, your wife will like this kitchen. This is a huge kitchen, great for birthday parties. They even have a place where your daughter can play. The man is thinking, yeah, my daughter, you know. So that's what you do with pictures and stories. Look at this. You're thinking, oh, nice. Or, so this is what you do with images, especially with houses, when you're selling and this is relative because it depends on your clients and it depends on the property you're selling. For instance, if you're selling a multi-million house for maybe 5-bedroom and you have a buyer, most likely that's why it's good to listen to your clients. Let them talk first. Don't be so quick to talk about the money, the location, how this is the best investment in their life because in the next 4 years they'll have 450% ROI. Listen to them. Listen to where they are coming from. Listen to why they want to buy the house. And they'll probably say, we're just moving, we're looking for a nice place to live. And then imagine you showing them around the house and then you'll be like, this would be a great place for your daughter to stay. This would be a nice place for her to do her assignments. This can be a good place to host the family. It's just say those things and he's playing pictures in his head. If you're writing Facebook stories ads, instead of just like showing clear pictures, try and put a father-daughter time, family, make them remember the family. Because the whole reason why they're buying the house is because of their family. So you want that to be the forefront of the discussion. Keep the facts at the end mostly. Once you've convinced them emotionally, it's easy to now push in the money. But if you start with money, facts, location, and this, that one, it's like the guy is tired. It's same thing if you go anywhere. I'm trying to think about something that I bought that was very stressful. If you go to buy a phone, right, and then they bring phones and they start telling you this one, the battery is this something. They start calling the battery. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. They start telling the battery. They don't tell you 7 hours. They start telling you all those funny numbers. They write at the back. They now start telling you the camera is this. They go to the next one. You get tired. As you're standing, you're just like, it's tiring to even think about it. Usually what people go with is the choice that they have seen mostly in movies and phones. And I think that's their choice, not really their choice. The reason they went with that is because they've seen it everywhere and they've seen it in stories and they just assume that, oh, because everybody else went with this, I'll just go with this. So but imagine if you came and the attendant started telling you, do you want really nice pictures? Go for this. Are you a business person? You want? Go for this. It's different. So now your imagination is, yeah, I like pictures. I'll go for this. But if they come and start giving you facts, you get tired. Your mind shuts down. Maybe at the end of it, what people mostly say is, you know what? I'll come back tomorrow. I'll get back to you. I'll come back tomorrow. When I do, like, I'll go and think about it. I'll come back to. The truth is, once I've left that place, I'm not thinking about it again. It's gone, and that's what happens. But stories, nah, you don't forget the story. You don't even forget the story they told you when you were a bit drunk. You still remember. It's one of those. I remember that story you told me. You get where I'm coming from. So use that to sell, because that's how they've been selling to you your whole life. Every advertisement you've ever seen is really a story. Impact, more impact. Smiling faces never gets old. Everybody likes a person that smiles. You don't know why you like them, you just like them. Use impact. Smile with the people you meet. Be warm with them. You know, because usually when you meet someone that smiles, you feel like you can trust them. whether you know it or not, you feel like you can trust them. Okay, so 3 simple storytelling methods. The first one is a personal story. So now the thing about stories is, just because people relate to stories doesn't mean you start telling them just any type of story. I mean, if you meet someone and they have 5 minutes and you start telling them a story of how you came to Lagos and how you suffered, quite frankly, quite frankly, nobody cares and you might as well just leave. So use a story to emphasize your point. You need to be very practical about stories. If I meet somebody and they have once lost their money to maybe fraudsters in the past who told them they were buying a property, but they sold somebody else's property to them, you can start with the personal story. They have told you their story. They are very upset. They don't want to listen to you because the last time they spent money in property, somebody took their money and ran away. You can start with the story and tell them, you know what, I get you. You're right. I have a brother. Let me tell you what happened to him. So 3 years ago, he spent 5 million on this property, and they told him everything was set. He even signed papers. 4 months down the line, EFCC showed up and seized his property, and all his money was gone. And just like you, the man swore never to try again. But you know what? He met this agent, and the agent told him, we can get your property back for you. Now the man is like, okay, now you're talking. How did they get? He's now like, okay, you're using a personal story, but you're relatable. You're bringing a solution through your story. So the story is not just tell stories, but you're bringing in your agenda. So the agent works with the EFCC, and they decided to review his file. And when they reviewed his file, they discovered that the company was corrupt, and they went to get the company instead. And long story short, they managed to get half of his money. And guess what? The agent got him a better property, authentic property, and now he has a house, and he has a property, and he has the land document. So I'm telling you that just because one person took your money doesn't mean you should never own property in your life again. I mean, don't you want to own property? So are you going to give power to that person that stole your money? So the man is like, nah, why give power? Especially if it's like an Igbo man, is like, you know how they're very egoistic. So, the thing is, with stories, you can use a personal story, but it has to fall in line with what the solution you're bringing. You cannot just use any personal story and start ranting. Or you can use a historical story. Now, a historical story is usually something that has happened that we all know about. Sometimes you just use it to emphasize a point or to break the ice. That's a story, especially if you're meeting a client that is telling you, it's far, or I need to talk to all the people in my family. You tell them that story and their mind is like, wow. Especially because they know Sujimitan, like, he's rich now, right? So it's like, why can't you be like this? Or there's a story about Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator guy. So he actually got his first million at the age of 22 before he became an actor. And how he got his first million is he invested some money in a real estate deal. And the real estate deal blew, and he became a millionaire even before he got the role of the movie, right? So it might not apply here, but those are the kind of stories you tell people, and it makes them think. So that's the power of a historical story. Then you know the meet the guru story. Now, meet the guru story is, I can tell you, well, I've worked with clients that, I have a client that was like you, and he came in here complaining, but right now he has a property and he's in the UK, he has 3 properties. And you know what, I understand where you're coming from. I also have another client, and I'm like, you know, this client, that client, you're looking at me like, okay. And she she knows people, right? I can relate to your story because I've worked with people like you, so don't worry, you're safe with me. I can handle your situation. So that's that kind of story. And even if you know, it's good to be honest. Like I said, you can be honest, don't lie, because everything you say that it's not true reflects back on you. But you can use stories from your colleagues, you can use stories you've heard from other people and use it as the meet the guru story. Because for every story you hear, you learn something. So those are experiences you can tap into, and that's the kind of meet the guru story. And then the lived happily ever story. Now this is a story everybody likes, where you can assure them that nothing happened. Yeah, it's like the story we just started with, where I mentioned, imagine a man that doesn't want to buy a property because he's been defrauded before in the past, and then you start talking about the EFCC story, and now you're ending it with the guy has his own property now. That's a happily ever after story. He ended well. Usually this is the kind of story that works all the time. Stories that end well. So like, okay, if it happened like this for somebody else, you're like, it can happen for me, you know? So these are the methods you can use with storytelling. And the whole point is, before you begin telling stories, before you use storytelling method on clients, you need to listen to the clients. Because if you don't know where they're coming from, you wouldn't know how to approach them. For every person you meet, they have different objectives. Now, with the ibejulekki investments, people have different reasons why they don't want to invest there, or why they think they don't want. Some people have distance. Some people have money issues. Some people have just trust. So imagine if you met someone that has trust because they've been defrauded in the past, and you start talking to them about distance and telling them how in the next 5 years the place will be open. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about that. I mean, that's not his problem. His problem is, how can I trust you? So you need to listen, and you don't get to know this if you don't talk to them, if you don't, listen to their concerns, engage them. Okay, so more points with storytelling and more points with interacting with people. Do your research. Do more research is listening. If you're writing an ad copy, do more research is try and look at other ad copies, see what people have done in the past. Google is really helpful. There's almost nothing you Google and you won't see something. So Google is really helpful. And most of the time, I like working with stuff from other countries. Now the reason is, Nigeria, you can use local stuff, but when you see what other countries have done, it helps you, it broadens your perspective. So you can mix it up, so it makes you stand out. So do more research. Look at what people have done all around the world. See the things that can work, see the things that can't work. Usually what happens is I put myself as a buyer. If I were a buyer, if I see this, would I buy? Why would I buy? Do I like the picture? Do I like what they said? Get those things, right? Every time you're writing for a buyer, every time you're speaking to someone, imagine you were that person. Right? Don't write for yourself. You're not writing an ad copy to impress yourself. You have to take yourself out of the equation and imagine that someone was trying to convince me. What about you will make me want to buy it? If you can't do that, you can always send a copy to a friend, a close friend, a colleague, and tell me, what do you think about this? I saw this. Does this convince you? As you read it, what did you... Have you ever read an ad copy and you felt that they were shouting at you? that they're literally commanding you to buy. And then you're like, why is this person rude? Like, and you go to the next one like, you know what, I'm not dealing with you right now. Well, well, stuff like that. Stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say is people read energy through material. You know, sometimes you just write things and you think we're just writing. People actually read the energy, because every time you're reading the material, every time you're listening to somebody, you're playing a story in your head, consciously or subconsciously. Just like when you pick up the phone and you've never spoken to this person, and then you hear hello, you've already imagined the person's face. Whether or not you've never seen this person in reality, you've already imagined the face. Based on how the person sounds, you now think, is she rich or poor? Like, this is how dynamic our minds are. It's very complex. So when you're writing, you want to put more soul into it. So add more interest. Refine your headline. Now, headlines are very important, because most headlines will determine whether or not people are going to click on your post. You can have a fantastic story, you can have a fantastic ad, but if your headline is very plain, most of the time they'll just go over. We all do it, especially online, and most of our advertisements is done online. You're on Instagram and you're competing against fashionable clothing, you're competing against flashy cars, you're competing against really nice selfies. If you have a boring headline, nobody will even want to waste time on you, because I'd rather be looking at something else than trying to understand what you're saying. So simplify your content. We already spoke about this, where we said go straight to the point, use simple English language, be clear, give your audience what they want. It's about them, it's not about you. Usually I tend to say, saying everything about a product, it's too much information. You have to start slowly, okay? First things first, are they interested in a property? Great, talk to them. Where are they looking at? Most people don't know what they really want, especially when they have the money, you know? They just know they want a property. They think they know, but the more you probe them, you discover they don't really have an idea. It's usually what their auntie said, oh, this is where they should buy. So the more you speak to them and the more you get to know them, you can easily tell answers that will suit them. Because like I said, it's about them, it's not about you. So effective copywriting is salesmanship in print, not clever. Okay, so this is about, you're not a poet. When you're writing to sell someone, you're not a poet. Nobody really cares if the sun is glowing or not. You just have to go straight to the point. You're not trying to show people that you can write well, right? Then have a purpose behind everything you write. For every copy you write, for every ad copy, for every video you make. And when I say clear writing, it also includes making videos. You know, since this is real estate business, I just wanted to talk about writing in general. But in real estate business, usually what works more is visuals, pictures, videos, just because there's really no way you can really explain land so much. I mean, you can't say the earth is brown, it has nice green leaves. So what works more are the videos you make. So it's like even when you're saying the video, you want to see whatever you're saying should make sense. Don't be rumbling. Don't start talking off point and saying things that don't make sense. Every word you use should make sense, should have a purpose. If you don't have anything to say, show them the land. That's what they want to see, actually. So how to make your copy visually appealing? Now, if you're writing an ad copy and you want to make it very easy to read, the first thing you do is you need to understand how to write paragraphs. Don't make your paragraphs too long. Make them the appropriate size, 4 lines, 5 lines per paragraph. You know, don't make it too short either. It's very, it looks very distorted. And then use visual cues. If you're writing a list, you can use punchlines, like points. Because you know how if you're reading something long, you tend to just go on all the things that they highlighted. You go to the points, you probably go where there was an underline, you go where there are bold text. That's what you want to do. all the things that are important that you want them to focus on, you need to specify in your writing. If there are certain things you need to underline those things. If there are certain things you need to italics, you can italics them. And make sure you keep your headings. Make the headings bold. Don't make the heading like the writing. I'm reading and then I'm like, oh, so this way a heading is. Don't do that. Make it very easy for anybody to see, to understand what you're writing. Okay, so how to write a catchy headline in 1 minute. So I gave different examples on different types of headlines. If you're writing a catchy headline for lists, these are examples you can use. Tools you need for X's, whatever it is you're writing about. So tools you need for X. If I was interested in losing weight, and then you tell me tools you need to lose weight in 2 days, I'm reading it because I'm like, okay, I want to see this. But if you came and said, I don't know, what can I say? Said to lose weight is important, how to lose weight and blah blah. I'll just keep over you because it's long. What are you saying? But straight to the point, tools you need for this. I'm interested, I want to see this. Simple formulas for losing weight in 1 hour, although it's an exaggeration, but you get people to read because it's straight to the point. Essential examples of millionaires who got lands in their 20s. Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see millionaires who got lands in their 20s. If I came and now started saying that, okay, let's not even go there. Try these strategies for this. Try 3 strategies to make money in 6 months, to make money before 2020. Now you have my attention. I want to see your strategies. Easy places to find X. Easy places to find that. Easy places. Questions to ask when you're doing this. Questions to ask when you're looking for land to buy in Lagos. Now, if I'm looking to buy, I want to see questions I should ask. That's something important. X every Y should have. So it's like 2 things every millionaire should have. 2 things every fine boy should have. Like, okay, I want to see 2 things every fine boy should. It's vain, but it catches people's attention because it's straight to the point. It's direct. I know what I'm looking for. I know what I should be looking for. Habits of a successful X, habits of a successful speaker, habits of a successful whatever you want to put there, habits of a successful investor. So, signs you should X, signs you should buy a house, signs you should own a car, signs you should invest, signs you should and if you notice, what you notice is these are very simple, straight to the point, that most of them are in less than 6 words. And this is how your writing should be. Easy, straight to the point, easy to understand. Must have trends for X. So, now, and other examples. If you're writing an article, if you're writing a blog post, and these are examples you can use for catchy headlines. Everything you need to know about land titles. Everything you need to know about Omonile Wahala. Everything you need to know about I'm reading everything I need to know, everything are good. I don't want to have to read another thing again in my life after this. You have my attention. Then X, the definitive guide. Usually this is for longer articles, especially if you're writing a blog post and you're trying to treat a topic. You want to make sure that you're telling the reader, I know this is long, but if you read this, I'm promising you that I've put all the information you ever need to know about this topic in it. So you wouldn't have to go anywhere else. So the trade-off for reading my very long article is you get all the information at once. So this is why you have things like X, a definitive guide. So I'm like, buying a house in Lagos, a must read, everything you need to know. Great. So if I read this, I don't need to read any other thing in my life. People want to read it. A complete guide to this. A complete guide to how Sujimoto became a millionaire. Right. Okay. I want to see that. How I did X, the complete guide. We see this a lot. How I became this, a complete guide. Of the full story. That. And it's funny how You know how when you see this kind of article and then you read it and you're really pissed at yourself because you wasted your time, but the next time you see it, you still want to read it. That's the power of a good catchy headline. So it's one of those things where it works, keep using it. It never gets old. It's not because you read 5 crappy articles that somebody said that. When you still write it, people will still read it, because that's how we are. Most effective strategies for this. Foolproof tips, you're doing the wrong thing. Foolproof tips, you're buying the wrong land. Probably buying land. I want to read it, because, what is X? The only guide you need. What is land investing? The only guide you ever need. How I did X, and you can too. Now this is a very interesting. How I became a millionaire, and you can too. So I can become a millionaire. Of course I want to read it. You're doing it wrong. Okay, you're doing it wrong. Now I want you to notice a few things. When you're writing articles, when you're writing titles, speak to the person. You notice they use a lot of you. It's not doing it wrong, or just you cannot just put it out there without speaking to somebody. Speak to the reader. Assume that there's a reader already. How you are doing the wrong thing. So I'm reading it, I'm like me. I'm seeing myself in it. How you. It's not open. It's not open for you to decide whether I was talking about the woman by my street or my father. It's direct. That's why I said you need to be direct when you speak to people. Tell them you get a 5% discount. Don't say 5% discount. What is 5? What are you talking to? You get a 5% discount. I'll pick you up. Pick up time is. What are you writing to? I mean, you're assuming that every person reading is a reader. So speak to them. I will help you go through this. I'll take you for an inspection. Not inspection time is 10 o'clock. Pick up 2 o'clock. What are you writing to? What are you speaking to? Say, I'll meet you there by 2 o'clock. I'll pick you up. Speak to the person. Talk to them directly. So, catchy headlines for groundbreaking posts. Anyway, so it's the same thing we went through. So here, what no one tells you about. What no one tells you about being an investor. What no one tells you about being a poor person in Lagos. What no one tells you. Secrets of doing this. Now, if you notice here, things are a bit different. You have outrageous examples. Listen to the word. What no one tells you. Okay, I want to tell you a secret. If you read my stuff, I'll tell you a secret nobody else knows. I want to know your secret. So what's happening here? You notice that every time you see this word, your mind starts working. Like you're imagining already, what is the thing you want to tell me about? So you see how I said you can use words to paint a picture. You can play with people's imaginations with the words you choose to use. How I completely reinvented my life in 6 months. Your mind is, wow, how was she before? How is she now? What did she do? Right? So, okay. So I had a lot of examples. I just wanted to make sure we spoke about everything about catchy headlines, how to do guides. So use, still the same thing over and